small book, okay?
So some of the questions that we've been getting a lot are what's in it. Things I've heard is it splits your DNA or it becomes part of your DNA. It's only been 9 months. There's never been this technology before. Now, I'll hear a bunch of people say this too. They'll be like, well, why would I take a vaccine? It's something that's 99.7% likely to survive. I think I've heard people say that it's used for a tracking device. The side effects we have seen.
It was a little bit of a hassle, even though we are in the first classification as far as healthcare providers go. Luckily, I had some help from the guys upstairs. So the state auditor, Brian Colon, was a big help in making sure that the I's got dotted and the T's got crossed. Also, Lieutenant Governor Howie Morales, shout out to those two individuals for helping us. We sort of got skipped over in the first and they moved on to the second. So we finally got our appointment for the COVID vaccine. And of course, this is America, so you know exactly where I got my appointment. Walmart. Of course, America. All right, let's go in here and try this out. Very interesting location. This is America for you.
Have you tested positive for COVID in the last 10 days?
No.
Have you been in contact with anyone who has tested positive in the last 14 days?
No.
Okay, so you are good to go if you want to stand on that side and they'll call you in just a few minutes, okay?
Okay, thank you. I'm excited.
You're excited?
I mean, I don't like needles, but is what it is. Had a lot of vaccines in my day, and obviously later we'll talk about why I wanted to get it and the benefits and the risk to benefit ratio, because there's a lot of information going out there and I don't want to call it misinformation or disinformation. I think it just requires context, and hopefully we can provide some of that to you guys, even though I know I'm going to get a lot of hate from the wellness community and some of the chiropractors and people out there. The data is the data. So plus we just want to get our lives back to normal, don't we?
So we're going to give you this card. Remember to bring it back for your second vaccine so we can fill it out for you.
Okay.
Small book, okay? Alright, you're all done. And the Department of Health will make your appointment for the second dose. It'll send you a text in about 20 minutes with the appointment. Feel free to reschedule. Okay, and we also ask, since it's a newer vaccine, that you stick around for 15 minutes just in case you have any type of reaction.
Okay.
Alright, and there's some seats right behind you, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. So now what we do is we have to sit around for 15 minutes to see if there's going to be any side effects or reactions, and I think I'm feeling my first side effect, and I think it's this massive craving for Oreos, or maybe it's because I'm just sitting there looking at Oreos. But all in all, it wasn't a bad injection, not painful at all. It's a really small gauge needle, barely felt anything. So I've definitely had a lot more painful vaccines in the past. Like I said, especially tetanus is one of the ones that's like a lot thicker. Or the hepatitis, some of those other ones are a lot worse. So 0 to 10, 10 being the worst, I would say it's like a 1 as far as pain on the vaccine is concerned. So I wouldn't worry too much about that part of it.
Okay guys, what's going on out there in YouTube land? So I wanted to talk a little bit about the vaccine. So I did get the vaccine. I signed up. I'm a healthcare worker in New Mexico, so we are in the first tier. So I got the Moderna vaccine. So I wanted to answer some of the questions and concerns a lot of people out there have about the vaccine. So that was 2 days ago, no side effects. You can kind of see a little bit red maybe, but I think that was from the sticker. So it was a pretty long needle, so it was, it wasn't painful going in, but I definitely was sore that night. No fever, no other issues, really no side effects at all. So I wanted to kind of break down, there's a lot of concerns again about the vaccine, what people are doing for it. And I just wanted to give you guys some information so you could help make a rational decision about it. So when we're talking about vaccines, a lot of different vaccines in the past have been what we call, adenovirus vaccines, or even some that inject the weakened version of a virus into the body. The body then responds to those things and it makes antibodies, it lets your T-cells respond to those, and basically that gives you what we call immunity over time. So there's been some I don't even want to say misinformation, just misunderstanding about some of the things that have been going on. Basically, so when we look at Moderna and Pfizer as well, those are the two mRNAs. So mRNA is a piece of coding for a protein. It also has some lipid particles in there. The lipids basically allow it to cross over the membrane into the cell. And then it has saline, so that allows the osmotic ability of your body to be able to bring this into your body. So what we're talking about here, so DNA, a lot of you guys might be familiar with this from biology, but a DNA is a double helix strand. That is the genetic information for your body. The way we make proteins is you have an enzyme called helicase that separates these two things out, and then we have what's called translation and transcription. So basically you make an inverted version of the DNA, and what that is RNA. So then that RNA is then read and turned into mRNA. That mRNA is basically half of this with a couple codons exchanged. So instead of having uracil, you'll have thymine, for example. DNA is going to have the thymine, RNA is going to have the uracil. What happens then is it enters the cell. So this is a cell, we have our nucleus, which is where the genetic material is. And this right here is going to be an mRNA. So it's read through a ribosome. A transfer RNA basically comes along and reads it together. So what we have is a codon. So there are 3 different parts to this. And those 3 things all code for specific amino acids. Now, amino acids are the building blocks of protein. So what happens is basically within 10 days, they were able to decipher the genetic code for the CV-19 virus. Because of that, they were able to reverse engineer out different parts of it. And it's a super complex, protein-based virus, but it's also pretty simplistic on its base as well. So basically what this mRNA does is it sends a message that goes in here. It's read, it takes the amino acids floating around your body, and it puts them together in the exact specific order to make the spike protein for the CV virus. Once this spike protein is created, we think it might be expressed on the cell, it might even leave the cell itself, but your body's immune system will start to recognize it and create antibodies for it. So some of the questions that we've been getting a lot are, what's in it? This vaccine doesn't have thimerosal, it doesn't have mercury, it doesn't have adjuvants, it doesn't have any preservatives in it. Part of that is the reason why they have to keep it so cold. So it's one of the most simplistic vaccines that we've seen out there as far as the complexity of the actual vaccine itself. Super simplistic, not a whole lot to it. There's been some more things I've heard is it splits your DNA or it becomes part of your DNA. Simply not true. So you always basically split your DNA for any expression of any protein in your body. So when we take these amino acids and make proteins, those proteins make up every cell in your body, your hair, your nail, your bones, all those things. So this doesn't even do that. It skips this whole process. We skip translation, transcription. We just jump straight in here and start reading through the ribosome to make the protein. So it doesn't get part of your DNA, it doesn't change your DNA. Basically what happens is it's a message and it's just read through this ribosome over and over again until it makes enough spike proteins for your immune systems to start to recognize it and respond to it. One of the reasons why I decided to go through it, and I had a lot of questions on this too, it was very quick. But, I talked to immunologists, we listened to a lot of experts on it, and one of the reasons this was produced so fast was that the government basically funded the whole thing up front. So through your production processes, you wouldn't just make all these vaccines until it was approved by the FDA, until it was basically proven to be safe and effective and all those things. Because of the emergency situation we're in, they went ahead and created all of it, and then they were just basically waiting for the approval, and then they could go ahead and ship it out right away. So when we say, it's only been 9 months, there's never been this technology before, that is true, but the reason why isn't because it was rushed. The reason why is because we pre-funded it up front. It wasn't the pharmaceutical company itself, or it wasn't anybody else having to pay the price for it. We, the taxpayer and the people, paid for that up front. So that's not something that's super concerning, especially with our ability to code the DNA and basically unravel these proteins. So that's not something that I was overly concerned with, especially after I talked to immunologists, and I don't think that's something specifically you guys should be concerned with either. Now, when you look at the studies, there was 2 groups of people. So you had 15,000 people, that were vaccinated, and roughly 15,000 that weren't. In the study, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but roughly 200 people got COVID that didn't have the vaccine, and like 10 to 15 people had it that did. There was also a major drastic decrease in severity of disease and longevity of disease. So a lot of good things there. Now, is it perfect science? No, it's not, because we can't give all these people CV, right? So we don't know where these people went. So it's not perfect. But from the data we have, we think it has about a 94 to 95% efficacy rate based on that, which is pretty good. And if you're thinking about CV, it could move the orders of magnitude over 2 decimal points, meaning that instead of 400,000 deaths, we'd be, 2 the other way. So it's super important when you think of it in that sense. This is a 2-shot virus, the one that I got, Moderna, so I'll have to go get a booster shot again in a week or so. From the data that they've submitted to the FDA, the first one, after 15 days, gives roughly 85% effectiveness from the data they have, and the second one will get you up to 94, 95. I do think it's likely that I've already had it, so I expected a little immune response. Didn't have a big one, so maybe that means that I hadn't already had it, especially since I've been in the public sphere, actually working on people for the entire duration of this whole thing. And from a risk-benefit perspective, Right now, we've got about 15 million people in the US that have been vaccinated. As far as I know, there's been one actual death associated with the vaccine, so 1 in 15 million. It was a doctor in Florida. Most of the other videos you've seen out there, they're all fabricated. So the ones where people are shaking and tremoring, that's not what a neurological disorder looks like. That's not what a clonus looks like. And people are fulfilling their own self needs and fears with that by sharing that kind of information. It just isn't accurate. Those things aren't true. The side effects we have seen from it are what? Fever, headache, some lymph node swelling in some people. But all in all, I treat ICU nurses, COVID nurses, doctors as well. They've all been vaccinated. Not a single one of them has had a severe reaction to it. And then, we're talking about 1 in 15 mil in the US. And right now I think we're at 25 million confirmed cases. So that number is obviously a lot higher than that. Who knows, 50, 100, we're not really sure. But we're at roughly 440,000 deaths right now. So when you compare these things, it's really not something that's up for debate. Now, I'll hear a bunch of people say this too. They'll be like, well, why would I take a vaccine that's something that's 99.7% likely to survive when this is only 95% efficacy? Not the same thing at all. This is 95% chance that you either won't contract the virus or it won't be severe. So what that would do is move it over 2 orders of magnitude if you got vaccinated as well. So that's not saying that your survival rate is 99.7 if you're under 70, right? These aren't analogous things. So if you got vaccinated, your odds of even getting this would move over 2 decimals. So that would move you all the way over to 99.997. So when you hear people say that, they're not understanding statistics at all. Now, there was some reports out of Norway where roughly 23 people had died after getting the vaccine there. I believe it was the Pfizer one. But the health department went back in there, and unfortunately, they were giving these vaccines to terminally ill patients and patients that basically, couldn't handle very much. So was that a cause? Hard to say, because these people are, we're talking roughly 50% of people in nursing homes die every single year. So to assume that was the cause, it could have been, right? Like, some of these people are so frail that any challenge to their immune system is enough to kill them. I mean, for example, at the Capitol, I think there was 3 people that died of heart attacks. So they weren't even healthy enough to protest. So everybody thinks that they're healthy, but they might not know how healthy they actually are. In fact, so many people have underlying conditions. I've also heard that only 6% of people died from COVID itself, which is not true, right? There's only 6% of people in the CDC listings that didn't have underlying conditions. Okay, so that should actually be very frightening that 6%, of those deaths didn't have anything wrong with them. That's a much higher chance than you can have with virtually another virus you're encountering on a day-to-day basis. So that's another way that those statistics are twisted. For example, say you have an obese person with asthma that's 33 and they end up, this pushes them over the edge. They weren't probably going to die this year. They might have lived to be 55 or 60. They weren't healthy, but they weren't necessarily just going to be pushed over the edge. So it's not just this, only, sick people die, blah, 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 blah. Like, it is decreasing the life expectancy of people that are, not that healthy. And in America, we're looking at 40 to 60% of people are obese. So there's a good chance a lot of the people watching this video who might think they're healthy aren't really that healthy. So when we're looking at that, we need to make sure that we're getting the people that are, vulnerable vaccinated. So yeah, it's mRNA, it's not DNA, it doesn't change your DNA. Super simplistic ingredients. So again, we're not looking at mercury or thimerosal. And so people say they don't know what's in there. You can go actually look up the genetic coding for the mRNA. It's on their website. You can see all the ingredients as well. mRNA doesn't change DNA. That's just not how any of that works. It doesn't affect DNA at all. It's not going to change who you are, your expression of your genes. Your genes are hardwired. We have phenotypes or the expression, but your genome is what it is. So it's not going to change your DNA or your genes. It's not going to make you do things that you don't want to do. It's not going to sterilize you. None of those things. There's simply zero evidence that any of those things are true. And frankly, they're not physiologically possible. There was no pregnant women in any of the trials that they've done, so they're holding out on recommending it for now. But I do know a lot of pregnant women that work in the hospital that have had it done. And so far there's been no issues with it. Remember, we're injecting into the arm, so it's not necessarily going to go through your entire body system. It's not going into your vein. So we think that most of the expression of the spike proteins will likely actually be in the arm and the muscles in the arm, and generally in that region. So most of us have been vaccinated as children for MMR and all these other things anyway. And a lot of those have a lot more adjuvants and ingredients in them. And again, when we're talking about risk to benefit, this really isn't up for debate. You're talking 1 in 15 million versus 440K. I think I've heard people say that it's used for a tracking device or something like that. Again, this would be a terrible waste of money if they were going to do that, especially since all of us carry our cell phones on us anyway. We're tracking ourselves at all time. Not to mention there's cameras everywhere. There's essentially no place where you can escape from tracking if you want to be part of society. If you're watching this on YouTube right now, you're being tracked as well. The government has no need to inject nanoparticles into your body. It's just there's no evidence of that. That's really doesn't make any sense. It's nonsense. I've heard people say that they're using this as a way to kill people off. Again, just follow the logic here. If the elites wanted to do that, then who's going to buy all their dumb stuff on Amazon and Walmart and fill up your garages? There's been a lot of, like I said, a lot of concern for a lot of these things, and just none of these hold water at all. So I figured I would, jump in there first. I know a lot of people are hesitant, and make sure that I got vaccinated first. That way I could give you my experience. And this is coming from somebody who's skeptical of the system, who's skeptical of the pharmaceutical industry. But just because the pharmaceutical industry is dirty doesn't mean the opposite is good or, uncorruptible as well. There's people willing to grift and sell you stuff at every part of the way. So yeah, I'm just giving you my experience with the COVID vaccine. No problems at all. Again, the same people that are clamoring for businesses open, this should be something that's on the forefront for them, because this is the way for our society to get back to normal. It's the most efficacious thing we have out there. It's the way we have the best data on that actually changes the course of this pandemic. I mean, the data on this is significantly better than lockdowns, better than mask wearing, better than basically anything else. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't also do those things, especially since we don't know. And you still could be in that 5% that could transmit, right? And we don't know how long the durability of the the vaccine will last. So it could be possible we might need booster shots in the future. But this is something that I think is super important for public health right now. And it's really one of the only ways that we can get through this entire pandemic. Let me know what you think in the comments. I know a lot of people are, hell no, I'm not putting anything in my body. Again, I would argue that these people put, fake sugar, terrible foods. A lot of people do drugs. You have tattoo ink in your skin. This is kind of a weird place to draw a line in the sand about how you take care of your body. I really wish people would take care of their bodies more overall. I think that the COVID vaccine the data shows it's very safe. It's so much safer than actually getting this. And I think one thing too to remember is that people always assume that this number is either you just live or die. But that's not true. People are dealing with long-term side effects. People have had kidney damage and heart damage. There was a study done on Ohio State football players that were young, healthy athletes that had basically no symptoms. And roughly half of them had inflammation around their heart. So this virus, it can do damage. You don't know how your immune system will respond to it. So if we can avoid it, generally speaking, it's going to be better. So it's not just a zero-sum game when we're talking about this stuff. So hopefully this helped you guys out a little bit. There's some great online videos if you really want to learn how DNA and mRNA work as far as cellular biology. Unfortunately, these are sort of foreign concepts to people. Again, DNA has these nucleic acids that hold together here, and that's the coding. You put 3 of them together, and that's what we call a codon, and that expresses for an amino acid. I might link a couple in the box here, just translation, transcription, basically how proteins are created in your body, because I think that will help you understand the difference between DNA and RNA and basically how they work on a cellular level. So I'll give you guys an update after I get my booster shot. I would encourage you to get the vaccine. I would encourage you guys, again, I totally believe in body autonomy, but I really don't think there's anything to be super worried about when it comes to this vaccine. I'm a very conservative person when it comes to medicine. And, we always say you want to do no harm. And by misinforming people that this vaccine is dangerous, that's doing harm. It is real. The pandemic is real. The virus is real. I know people who've died from it. Is there an overreaction in the media? Is there an overreaction from governments? Yeah, I think there is. Is it possible that we're overcounting some of these numbers? I think it's possible. We've never done this before in the history of this country. We've never counted these things, and I think there's likely to have a huge nocebo effect. As you look on every single network TV channel, they have this big number on the side, telling you exactly how many cases and deaths. I don't think that's helpful for the public discourse. Again, I think what's helpful is rational discussions about the actual possibilities of what can go wrong and what can go right. So again, just made this video. I wanted to show you guys, I'm getting the vaccine personally. I'm fine. I'm not having any problems with it. I've let John Jones kick me in the leg before. The fact that I would be super scared of a vaccine that's been tested, it's gone through phase 3 trials. We've had, now we're up to 15 million people, that have been vaccinated. And we've got a really good data set. We had phase 3 trials with 30,000 in each group in Pfizer and Moderna. The safety data is really good, guys. Now, do we know the long-term effect? No, but we also don't know the long-term effect of CV either. If I was going to take the side effects of one, I'm much more comfortable with the mRNA, because all it's doing, again, it's making spike proteins, guys. It's not actually making the virus itself. You're not getting infected with the virus. It's just making the spike protein that's on the outside of the virus like this. So basically, your body's creating these little spike proteins. It's not the virus. It doesn't have any of the genetic material in here. It's simply just making these so that your immune system can recognize those spike proteins. So yeah, hopefully it's helpful for you guys. Again, let me know what you think in the comments. I know a lot of people aren't going to do it. And again, I'm somebody who totally believes in body autonomy and informed choice, but hopefully this will help you be informed a little bit more. Till next time, we'll see you guys.